background was that President Putin declared in the autumn of 2021, and he actually sent a draft treaty that he wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was what he sent us. And that was a precondition for not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. The opposite happened. He wanted us to sign a promise never to enlarge NATO. He wanted us to remove our military infrastructure in all allies that have joined NATO since 1997, meaning half of NATO, all the Central and Eastern Europe. We should remove NATO from that part of our alliance, introducing some kind of E and B or second-class membership. We rejected that. So he went to war to prevent more NATO close to his borders. He has got the exact opposite. He has got more NATO presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and he has also seen that Finland has already joined the alliance, and Sweden will soon be a full member. Because at the Vilnius summit, we agreed a statement where it was clearly expressed how Sweden will do more, follow up the agreement we had in Madrid on fighting terrorism, and also address issues related to export of military equipment. And then Turkey made it clear that they will ratify as soon as possible. This has been reiterated by President Erdogan several times. So I expect that when the Turkish parliament reconvenes later this autumn, the ratification will happen as soon as possible, which has been stated again and again. And then we will be 32 allies, and both Sweden and Finland will be members. This is good for the Nordic countries, it's good for Finland and Sweden, and it's also good for NATO, and it demonstrates that when President Putin invaded a European country to prevent more NATO, he's getting the exact opposite.
Can you please switch off your microphone?
Sure.
Thank you. Next is Claire Daly.
Thanks, President. Mr. Stoltenberg, you asked us to look at where we are today compared to when the invasion started. I'm not really sure what you meant by we. I know you spent a lot of time on NATO. Maybe that's the we, about the expansion with Sweden and Finland. But you were considerably quieter about the bitter disappointment experienced by Ukraine in Vilnius, that the hopes that they thought of a path into NATO didn't actually work out according to plan. Our chair said that aid somewhat compensated, which others have kind of said is that Zelensky's silence was basically purchased. But in essence, really, haven't you let Ukraine down in terms of the pathway to membership? And on the subject of Ukraine, is it not the case that your rhetoric and reality are going in opposite directions and the world is beginning to notice? Because you said that Ukraine is gradually gaining ground. That's not true. Since you were here the last time, Ukraine has lost territory. 500,000 men are dead. Ukraine has had to resort to conscription. There's reports of signing people up with disability, with mental illness, men paying money to get out of the country, hiding in their houses. We're now in a bloody war of attrition, and it's simply cruel for it to go on. Now, senior US military personnel are even getting into the pages of the Washington Post and so on, echoing the call made by General Milley last November that there should be peace, and a real peace. If you care about Ukraine, what's your attitude for a peace plan to save Ukrainian lives?
It's very impressive how NATO, EU allies, the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, but also, of course, a lot of EU members are together and in a very practical way coordinate, and I ensure we will continue to do so. Second, on standardisation and procurement. Again, I welcome the things that the EU does. NATO has also different programs. We realised last fall or last summer that this was going to be a war of attrition. So then production becomes extremely important. In the beginning, we depleted our stocks to provide support to Ukraine, but our stocks are not big enough, so we need to ramp up production. The reality is that our production capacity is not as big as it should be. That's the reason why we now actually see some good progress in new investments and more production throughout the alliance in EU and non-EU NATO allied countries. Then on the offensive and whether the Ukrainians are gaining ground or not. Well, I think we have to remember that no one ever said that this was going to be easy, the offensive. It was clearly stated that this was going to be a bloody, difficult and hard offensive. Because what we have seen is, of course, that the Russians have prepared defensive lines, layers of defensive lines, with trenches, with obstacles to battle tanks, dragon teeth, and mines, enormous amounts of mines. Hardly any time in history we have seen more mines on the battlefield than we see in Ukraine today. So it was obvious that this was going to be extremely difficult to ensure that we preserve peace for our members, for our countries, and to ensure that authoritarian regimes doesn't achieve what they want by violating international law and using military force. So I just tell you that, of course, sometimes it's hard to imagine how brutal this war is. But we need to never forget our responsibility to provide support to Ukraine.